the axe would impact onto the target without making one rotation. So we're not really talking about centrifugal forces here. That's all I'm saying. Are you prepared to accept that it would impact that without making one rotation from approximately 1.5 meters? That's all I'm asking.
It's possible for that axe to be thrown and hit the wall. Yes,
Yes.
I do agree, yes.
And without making a rotation, a full rotation from a distance of approximately 1.5 meters.
That's possible, yes.
Right.
What are you saying is possible?
That's possible, man.
Yes. And secondly, if the axe is thrown from approximately 4 meters, so let me put it to postulate you differently. What he found is you need approximately 4 meters for the axe to make a full rotation and impacting again onto a target when thrown, and given the fact that the throw motion will get the axe to make a rotation. You may accept that as well.
Then again, I'm going to ask you with regards to that, what was the force applied when throwing the axe? Because we don't know, I don't know, and I expect the defense will also not know what type of force was used when the axe was thrown. If you're going to apply more force to the axe, won't it actually rotate more?
But isn't that exactly my point, Captain? Isn't that exactly the point?
Yes, because we don't know.
We don't
know.
But that's the point I'm making.
So for me, the axe striking the wall means nothing for me. For me, it's about creating the pattern simultaneously with the axe striking the wall.
Can I ask you something else as well?
That also not also depend upon
where the person who throws the axe holds the axe.
That's correct.
So there's this another variable.
There's lots of
That is
variables.
also my point.
There's lots of variables for.
Yes.
In an experiment, you have to consider every possible variable.
That is
And not just because if you don't do that, you're not objective.
That's precisely my point. Captain, the other thing, do you know in which way the axe was facing when my client said he threw the axe?
No, I don't know that.
Now, when a rotating axe, this is talking about centrifugal forces, and I'm going to refer to an axis of rotation in order for the record not to get completely confused. I'll refer to the axe as exhibit 1. The axis I'm referring now is actually just the axis of rotation, the point around which the axe would rotate. You with me?
Yes.
Now the axis of rotation, if I understand, remember back to my school days, this runs, that is a very long time. This is simply the rotation of the axe around its own center of mass, which is in plain English, simply the balancing point of the axe.
That's correct.
It turns around, it spins around this. If this is an object that had equal mass throughout, like a piece of a stick, a broomstick, if you were to throw that, the two outer parts would spin at exactly the same speed because the center of mass of that broomstick will be roughly in the middle of the broomstick. You understand
Yes,
that?
yeah, I'm with you.
And both the side ends of a broomstick will move at exactly the same speed around its center of axis.
That's correct.
In this instance, we now know, because the balancing point of the axe is virtually right on top of the blade, that the handle, when this is rotating, will move at a far greater speed than the head.
That's correct.
Yes. And the simplest way, I suppose, to demonstrate this is if I hold a piece of string, a long piece of string with a weight on the side, and I start swinging it around my head, my arm here will be fairly slow, but the outer part will move at a very, very fast speed to cover the same rotation as my hand is making.
That's correct.
That's simply how it works. Now, so we also then know that if this while this axe is moving forward and rotating around its own axis, the centrifugal force on the rotating head will be far less than the point of the handle because the handle is simply moving faster.
Yes.
Accepted. Okay. But now in contrast to that, sir, if I'm holding the axe in my hand and I swing it overhead and I impact like that onto a target, now the blade becomes the outside point of moving, and the blade now must move faster to keep up actually with my shoulder. Correct?
That's good.
So the centrifugal forces on the blade itself will be far greater than when I'm throwing it. Simply
You're using the
because
same mechanism with throwing and with handling it like that. You're using
No.
the same mechanism.
Captain was
When you
speaking.
throw an axe, you use the same momentum like hitting.
Yes, but when I throw it, it leaves my hand and it starts
It
spinning.
doesn't matter because already you started the motion and you're creating the force, the centrifugal force. When you start swinging the axe, it's already there.
Captain, with respect to you, the centrifugal force has nothing to do with the speed moving forward.
No,
The centrifugal forces has everything to do with the curve, the rotation that an object makes. All I'm saying to you, the centrifugal forces of a knife like that, which is swung overhead and thrown, would be far greater than an axe at the same speed traveling forward, but the centrifugal force will be determined by the spinning motion of the axe. That is pure, plain high school science with respect. Do you accept that?
I accept it, yes, but you still, even if you use any instrument and you swung it, you will start creating. Doesn't matter if it's an axe or a pipe or a hammer, it will start creating cost.
Yes. What I will,
From the start of the swing, it depends on the force applied to it.
of course, but I will agree with you. Well, I will put you in fairness. I can, of course, take the axe and I can do this into the wall, and it will probably not create much cast off, even if there's a lot of liquid blood on it, because I'm not swinging it really fast. You accept that?
It's possible, yes.
Yes. But if I really swing it and very hard, you'll expect quite a lot of cast off because of the speed and the centrifugal forces that I'm creating by making that rotation.
Depends on the volume of blood on the axe.
And of course the speed that I'm creating. Right. But let's examine that. What we do know from your own crime scene. Could you please go back to B17, please? That you will find on the photograph. Perhaps paragraph number 67. Now we know, Captain, that the cast off that is created against the wall that you identify at B17, that was created by somebody. I'm sorry, Lord. Sorry, photograph 67, I beg your pardon. Photograph 67 on DD1. I beg your pardon. I should. And that this cessation, this cast off, was caused by an axe being used in a controlled fashion. Correct?
That's correct.
We also know that the axe was swung towards the person lying from the floor.
That's correct, my lord.
The marking of B17 you measured to be 1,401 millimeters above the ground. So we get an idea of how high that cast off were, which was created by a impact, correct?
That's correct.
But it doesn't stop there, because is it correct that on the 20, you had to cause to go back to this crime scene because you were informed that there was a further stain still visible. And here, if one zooms in, there was one roughly above.
Actually, I think 4 butts.
4 there.
Yes.
But I could only find one. But on the
ceiling.
Did you find any similar of the stairs?
No, I did not. No.
You did not. Okay. Now, you also concluded in this document, have a look at it if you want to refresh your memory, but perhaps you can just confirm. The ceiling that you found is.
Just repeat that one, please.
But observed on the ceiling was the result of cast off. From a practical point of view, that there was a which one, possibly two, seen on a wall a meter away in one. Plus, there was an additional 4 droplets behind the control movement.
4 on the ceiling.
So that, which you can show.
Given to you initially when you request it.
Please
I can
find
present
them.
them. I want to have them with me. Functionality, my lord, was from a back suit.
Okay, now,
And
well,
the foot suit.
right, let's examine that as well. Are you suggesting that on a backswing, you tend to create more centrifugal forces than on the front swing?
No?
Then what makes
And how much force you are using.
okay, so the size of the cast off is dependent on the amount of blood. Sorry?
And the force.
And the force. Well, let's just deal with the force. Are you suggesting that a backswing forward swing?
I'm not saying that. No.
Right. So if it is only the amount of blood that determines the size of the cast off, do we then know, when we have regard to B24, or can you then really, with having regard to B24, makes a finding, an absolute finding, that the axe was not thrown, but it must have been a controlled hit?
My lord, another factor we need to consider, it's not just about the volume of blood and the force applied, it's about the arc, the swing. How long was he actually swinging that up? So for how long was he swinging? Because the longer you swing it, the more splatter you will create.
Yes,
You need
do
to
we know
consider
that?
that as well. And also then the volume. Okay, we can leave out the force, but there's a volume and there is that momentum, how far you actually went back and started to swing.
But do you know that?
We don't know that.
All right. So just to summarize then, Captain, all the unknowns. Sorry, there's one aspect I first also wanted to point out to you. Did you also take into consideration as triple D12, the second page there, quite aptly demonstrates that if he threw the axe from somewhere on the stairs, the general trajectory of the axe would have been in a downward motion. It would be going down. He's throwing from above and throwing down.
That's correct, my lord.
At a fairly big angle, roughly about 45 degrees. Would you accept?
That's about, yes, my lord.
Yes, right. But let's now look at the unknowns. We don't know with how much force this axe impacted on the wall, correct?
That's correct.
And that holds true for whether it was thrown or whether it was a controlled.
That's
Correct.
correct.
We don't know whether the amount of blood that we see on that wall, how high a cast off or a cessation cast off that amount of blood, if you want to reproduce it again, would be required to be on the axe. It would be virtually impossible to do that afterwards, correct?
You can use different volumes of blood and do multiple experiments to actually create that pattern.
Yes, but then of course, the moment that you then change the force, if I hit harder, swing harder, with less blood, I might create as long or as equally long a cast off as I would with more blood, by swinging slower.
That's why you do experiments and you use multiple volumes until you actually reach the point where you can actually make a conclusion whether or not you actually get a similar pattern or you don't get a similar pattern, and you can agree or you can exclude.
I accept that, Captain. I'm just simply putting on record, and please tell me if you agree with me. These two, the force, whether you were swinging, a spinning centrifugal force, will determine this is the cast. Determine that, as well as the amount of blood that was on the axe. Correct? We also don't know how many rotations the axe.
That's correct, Madam.
Your suggestion that it was a controlled impact, whether he was swinging it overhead or he's only, we simply don't know.
That's correct.
Now, can I ask you this to start, and we could have avoided a lot of these questions. Are you saying it is impossible that the marking on the wall and the cast off and cessation cast off could have been caused by an axe that was thrown?
My Lord, taking my experience and from the 3 courses I did in bloodstain pattern analysis,
Yes?
and the experiments we did during those 3 courses, where we actually used different types of weapons like axes and hammers and pipes, and creating cast off patterns against walls, against ceilings. I can definitely say that it is my opinion that axe was not thrown. In my opinion,
Yes.
looking at the physical characteristics of this thing,
I need to put it in that Mr. Stale will say that given the fact that we know so little, there are too many factors and facts that is simply unknown in this scenario to come to a conclusion one way or the other.
I would disagree on that fact, my lord, because if you take experiments and you use different forces, you can use different people. You can use different people and you can use different, like you start off with 1 milliliter of blood, you can go up to 5, 10, 20, and you can still be able to make some conclusion from that experiment. If you put some effort into it, my lord, it will be possible.
Ask Mr. Stale, who now has an axe, to go and try and do those experiments. And you say it's important that he uses blood. Of reacting, correct?
That's correct. From the viscosity of the blood, because the higher the temperature, the less viscosity is the blood.
You talk about the blood that he uses.
That's correct.
Yeah, I
And it's
understood
used in
from-
in different temperatures as well.
Grim as it sounds to me, but he uses his own blood in his experiments. But anyway, don't ask him.
No, I did not.
The previous aspects that you referred to now were those experiments that were done with an axe as well.
Yes, we did, yes.
And was the axe thrown as well?
No, it wasn't thrown, it was handled, yes.
It was only hit.
Yes.
And could you give us an indication in those experiments that you made when the axe was hit in a controlled fashion, did the...
Depends on the volume, because we use the different volumes.
You can get a small castle, but you can get a very high castle.
That's correct, yes. But, my Lord, I just want to ask, the experiment that was done at 1.5, is that was that measured from where the axe left the hand until it struck the wall?
Yes. Quite important.
Okay, now, if you look at my exhibit,
Yes.
the impact side of the wall there is 237 millimeters to the railing. So if the attacker was standing on that specific landing there, why would you throw an axe at the person if you can actually hit him with the axe?
Sorry, I didn't say that again.
The axe struck the wall, and and where the wall is and where the railing starts, it's 237 millimeters. Deduct that from 1,500 millimeters, you get 1,000 millimeters left. Then you have to place your attacker there. So if he was thrown, the experiment was done at 1.5. If you can actually hit the person with the axe at that distance.
I'm not entirely sure I follow you. Just say that again. Just go back to me. 2 of the exhibit D12. If I understand it correctly, your measurements were the following. From where the first starts to the wall was 3,799 millimeters.
My Lord, if it's allowed, may I actually demonstrate this to the board? Is it allowed here? May I leave the bench? What can you do? Come right.
This is not throw it at me.
Can I come to use this side? Okay. This is now the wall, the staircase wall. This is where the axe struck the wall. Okay. Now you've got 237 millimeters. This is the railing of the staircase. Now this is the landing part where the attacker should have been running. Alright, so you're running away. That is just more or less. Now, if you were thrown at 1.5, well, I haven't got a measurement with me. Do you anybody got a measurement? If possible?
Don't have it, yeah?
Alright.
There's an estimate, it's fine.
Why would you
That's
throw an
fine.
axe from here if you can actually strike?
But Captain, I was at pains to tell you
So
that it's
how do
very...
you throw the... Let's say...
I would have hit him. I will not throw the axe from this distance. The possibility of missing that person is slippery.
Captain, before you go back to the witness stand, understand that again. I was at pains to point out to you that it's quite important, place on record, that the measurements of 1.5 and almost 3 meters is from the axe, not from the person throwing it.
Yes, but still, I'm
That's not 1.5
I'm not
meters.
saying this. Why would you throw an axe this short distance?
You are placing yourself 1.5 meters away. Place the axe, move back.
No, but I haven't got a measurement to actually have it precise.
Move yourself back. That's definitely 1.5 meters of the spectrum. No, Lord, I'm not going to allow this to go out in the world. It's creating a completely false impression.
It's just a short.
With respect.
You decide whether the impression is false or not.
I'm just trying
You
to-
disagree with his impression.
No, well, I disagree with these measurements. It's quite clear that he's not holding the axe 1.5 meter away from the wall. With respect.
Just remember, he's about to retire. So please don't-
No, I'm not thinking about it.
Now that it is almost 11 o'clock, maybe we could take the clear journal in the meantime.
Yes, we could do that. Report the journal. Rising boat, on and off. Ba, ba, ba.